tickets and purchase tickets after service. There may be things that you didn't know you needed. The Religious Exploration Team is organizing a mural art spirituality tour of Philadelphia for our congregation. You'll see more information in the order of service and the announcement pages. There's a short time frame to get the tickets for this event, so please contact Amy. Wave, Amy. There's Amy. If you're interested, or Ann. I don't know if Ann's here today. Ann's in religious education right now, but it looks like it's going to be an awesome tour, so I highly recommend you check it out. If there's room, you might be able to ask your friends. Also, after today's service, as I mentioned briefly, our guest speaker, Dennis Brunn, will be presenting more information on how we can partner with UUPLAN to work towards a more just Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And there's pizza for those who stay, so you won't have to compete with your stomach. The We Care team, raise your hand, Rich, needs volunteers for the anticipated one weekend breakfast per month goal at Family Service Homeless Center, the shelter. So please see Bernie Griega, who is also here. Wave, Bernie. He's in the back. Hi, Bernie. Or Rich Kelly for more information. Next Sunday, we invite you to stay after the service for lunch and a presentation on the proposed budget for next year. And then on Sunday, March 24th, we have our second annual Passover Seder for Freedom, which is a not-to-be-missed event. It's a potluck event, so please RSVP with your family name and number, how many of you are coming to the Passover meal, to hospitality@uuflb.org by next Sunday, March 10th. This is a full Seder, including the story, of course, singing, dancing, and the lunch. There's also going to be recipes available at coffee hour, because if you're not familiar with Passover, the food has to be made a certain way, and it's still delicious and an awesome thing. Thank you, Janet. Please see your order of service for more details on these and other opportunities. And now, let us enter into worship together.
When you catch it, you can join in if you want.
Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me. Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me. Drink the water, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever. Walk the world, walk the world now, walk the world now, children. Walk the world, walk it now with me. Walk the world, walk the world now, children.
walk the world, walk, walk, walk the world, walk
the world now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. And the world will last forever and a day. And the world will last forever and a day.
Welcome to a day of hope and promise, to a place of peace and comfort, to a journey toward peace and justice, and to community of love and courage. This community will help us along the way. And at this time, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me in our opening hymn, number 121 in the gray hymnal, We'll Build a Land. like you to, like the children of young at heart and the actual children are welcome to come forward for the story today.
Hello, everybody. Really glad to see you here this morning. And you know, today's service is about justice or fairness. And I wondered if you've been in a situation at school or in the neighborhood where you thought you saw something or experienced something, you said, that's just not fair. And you really got concerned about it. Have you been in a situation like that? Can you think of something that you saw? I see some nodding. Could you tell us what was the situation? Okay. So when somebody's leading a group, you may not feel you're being treated fairly. Okay. Yes. Okay. So sometimes you think you have a right to share something, a toy or something, and they don't, and the person doesn't share, and you say, wait a minute, I'm not being treated fairly. Okay. Well, the story I have today is about something that I saw when I was about 10 years old, which was a while ago, which made me get very concerned. I thought it was very unfair. And actually, I happened to grow up in a town in Long Island, which was near a town that was called Levittown. It was Levittown, New York. And just like the houses out here, many of the people moved out into that area in the 1950s when the economy was generally looking good, and many people worked in factories and plants, and they were the first time able to own houses, just like the ones you see out here. And my family, as far as I knew, we always had enough to eat. My father had a job. He went into the city by train every day. And everybody I knew seemed to be living all right. And we had something you might have in your family. We had a family story. It was about how we got here. And it was a very usual story in the sense that we always talked about my father's father who came over in a boat, who spoke no English. He was Italian. He spoke no English. He worked in hard and difficult jobs, but bit by bit, he and then his kids, through hard work, things got better and better and better. So the family story was very close to what you may know people talk about as the American dream. That if you work hard, no matter what color you are, what language you may speak, whatever you are, you work hard and you pay attention to education, things get better and better, and you will have a pretty good life. So this was a story. And my world, and this was really before television really changed what I knew every day. What I knew was my neighborhood, my family. So my parents gave me a bicycle that was a big enough bike that I could start really getting around. And one day, I was going by the potato fields. That was the big agriculture out in Long Island then, potato fields. And at the edge of the field, I stopped, and here was a family. I think my memory is maybe 10 people. They were all talking Spanish. They were living in an abandoned railroad car. They had an old tin, a barrel they were cooking their food in. There was no bathroom. I could tell, I didn't know much, I could tell these were people in a lot of poverty. And it was upsetting to me because it went against this. I could see they were all working hard. There were people out in the fields working, and these were the family taking a rest and getting ready for the people to come back. So this, for some reason, and this happens sometimes when you're about 9 or 10 or 11, you really see some things that you may not have noticed before. And it was very upsetting to me that these folks in this world that I thought was pretty fair and where hard work led to some security, they were really living in dire conditions, in bad conditions. And it was upsetting. I went home and I began to talk to my parents, talk to my teachers, and it really was a turning point. I began, when I grew up, to study about why is it that conditions are often so bad for people even if they work hard? Or why is it that conditions are worse for people who speak a different language or a different color? And that really led me to a whole career where I've been working on trying to make conditions better related to injustices. So that's my story, and I think that sometimes you see something that's upsetting to you, you begin to think about it. Why did that happen? And maybe you can do something to make it better. So thank you.
Hi, if we will all sing the children out to religious exploration classes. Our annual pledge campaign will begin March 10th, which is next Sunday. As we prepare to ask you to consider your financial commitment for the coming year, we've asked some members of the fellowship to share with you what they believe makes this fellowship priceless. This week's speaker is Scott Thompson.
I didn't see it in the order of service. I was hoping you'd forgotten it. Apparently not. Well, it may cost us $2,200 a week to keep the doors open at UUFLB, but this fellowship is priceless to me. I have a long history here. I started attending the fellowship in 1973, and I was 13 years old at the time. And although there were breaks in membership when I was away from school, I lived out of the area and for a brief period attended another church. I have a 40-year history with Unitarian Universalism and a 40-year connection with this congregation. Actually, I couldn't believe when I sat down to do this that it was actually 40 years, but it is. I grew up in the fellowship. I was a student member here during the period in my life when I knew it all, and did a Sunday service on why school should be voluntary. I was also a member when I was a father of a young family and served as a lay leader with a clingy toddler in my arms whose diaper became overloaded from all of the apple juice he drank, and the byproduct dripped out my leg as I introduced the speaker. True story. I grew up here and hope to grow old here as well. The congregation, or UUFLB, the congregation's third name since I've been associated with it, is my second home and is as comfortable to me and as familiar to me as the home where I sleep at night. And how do you put a price on that kind of home? 2 of my 3 children were born here, and all 3 were dedicated here. Abby, my eldest, was born while we were still living in Virginia. My children also benefited from the RE program, and particularly from the AL program, the Our Whole Lives program. The foundation it gave them in taking on the world of romantic and other relationships is truly priceless. How do you put a price on the self-respect and sense of dignity that the program gave to my children? The fellowship is also a respite for me. In a world where people measure one another by their personal worth and the make of the car they drive, where most of the transactions we engage in during the course of the week are commercial exchanges, and where we worry about the kindness that someone shows to us, we worry about the motivation of people who share that kindness. It's a relief to walk into the fellowship each Sunday where the exchanges are more genuine, the focus is not on commercial transactions, and where we challenge one another not to consume more or to do more or to consume more or to amass more, but to do more to make the world a better place and to live by our shared values and principles. I also know that when I leave here each Sunday, whether I spent the morning in the service or in an RE room, I am better off and a better person than I was when I entered the fellowship in the morning. The quality of our services, both those Sundays when Libby speaks and when we have guest speakers, is better than it's been in the 40 years that I've been associated with the fellowship. And we also have an outstanding RE program and people who are dedicated and active in each of our teams and committees. Having that wealth of talent and commitment that we have available to us in such a small congregation is really priceless. While the fellowship is priceless, there's still a cost to running the fellowship. We have to pay our minister for her half-time services, our office administrator, our director of religious education, and our babysitters. And what we pay is frankly very modest. And the fact that we have such quality people with the amount of money that we pay is really amazing and priceless. We also have to pay for the office, for the use of this space, and on some Sundays we actually pay for heat. Whether we get it or not is a different story. We also hope to begin to donate a tiny portion of our operating budget to a worthwhile service project and to live out our values in the community around us. It's not only the right thing to do, but research shows that churches that do spend a portion of their operating funds on well-targeted and worthwhile public service projects grow and grow stronger. And when they grow, there are more resources available for all the congregation's activities, including more for the service project, which stimulates more growth and an opportunity to make a greater impact on the community. The fellowship is priceless to me. I hope that you find it priceless too. I also want the congregation to be here for another 40-plus years so that it can serve another generation of people in our community. And if you want that, I hope that you'll help us out on Sunday morning by being generous as you can. Obviously, you commensurate with your circumstances. And whatever you pledge, that you continue to be a part of what makes this small congregation such special and so priceless to me.
Thank you, Scott. That was really heartfelt. And I also wanted to share with you, just briefly, that when you pledge, you will get this awesome green ribbon attached to your name tag that says priceless. So I know that everyone would like to have, and it doesn't matter how much you pledge, whether you get a ribbon or not. It's just a way of saying thank you and acknowledging that all of us at some level are priceless in this community. I look out and I know in my heart that all of you make the difference and why this is such a wonderful community for me. So thank you. And now we're going to share our joys and sorrows. When we share our joys and sorrows with each other, we invite this community to be a part of the most significant events of our lives. In this way, we come to know one another more deeply and to care for one another more lovingly. If you have come today with a special joy that longs to be shared, or with a sorrow that calls for our compassion and care, please come forward and I will light a candle for you as you speak.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Elizabeth. I just want to share with you my happiness. I was in Florida for a rare vacation and for a rare family reunion that I was very happy. My baby brother's only child was married on the west coast of Florida, and everything went beautifully, and it was just a wonderful week. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bernie Grieger. I am an immigrant, and I am living the American dream. Thank you, all of you. But I didn't come for that. I don't know whether you heard in the newspaper today that Bucks County made the 200,000. Thank everybody. Keep it coming. But it really makes a difference to us because we'll be working in those kitchens soon. So.
That's what the money, for those of you who may not be aware, the Buck Up for Bucks is to redo the kitchen at the Family Services Shelter, which is going to be a wonderful thing.
Good morning. I'm Janet Kelly. I'd like to light 2 candles in memory of 2 special people that we lost this week. My cousin, Matt Schiffer's dad, Steve Schiffer, and my cousin Amy Sloan's mother, Jean. And thank you. This is priceless. It makes me feel so much better that I can light a candle. Thank you.
Candle, if I could do it. These things have never been my friends. Yay. You know, I like matches. There's a stick and the flames on it and it works. No, I won't burn myself. Thank you, though. I'm going to light a candle for my son, Ben Applegate, who will be 18 tomorrow. And now I might burn myself. And there's something to be said for that. I think it's symbolic. And I'd like to light a final candle for all those unspoken joys and sorrows. May we keep both the spoken and unspoken in our hearts this week. Thank you. And now Dennis will give us our meditation.
Please join me in a spirit of meditation and reflection on justice. With your eyes closed, if you're comfortable, imagine you're walking down a city street, and against the building is a woman trying to sleep on a bed of cardboard, and next to her is a knapsack stuffed with whatever seems to be her possessions. It's cold. There has been some rain, so it's damp. You can see she has bad teeth. You can see that she reminds you a little bit of somebody you once knew. And you feel like moving on. What if, at the same time, you remember at your UU congregation, you learned that 6 million Americans today are living only on food stamps because of the way our safety net has been shredded. And you remembered because you have another friend in the congregation who told you that this past summer our general assistance program in Pennsylvania had been abolished. What feelings come to mind as you see this woman? What can our UU values and emphasis on justice mean to each of us in this situation? Imagine you have the opportunity to talk to your state representative, even to the governor. What would you say as a person of faith? As a people of faith, may we find the strength to live in the world as it is, the wisdom to identify the changes for good that are possible in our time and our place. And may we especially find the willingness to act together for change. Amen.
Paul Razor, an ordained UU minister, lawyer, classical and jazz trombonist, and professor at Virginia Wesleyan College, has this to say about our common faith that brings us together as Unitarian Universalists. I offer the following theological principles of Unitarian Universalism: the fundamental unity and interdependence of all existence, the transforming power of love, human freedom grounded in the inherent worth and dignity of all persons, principled theological openness, commitment to social justice, and the Church as a free, covenanted fellowship. He continues about our commitment as UUs to work for social justice. Just communities reflect the equal concern for all, respect for basic human rights and liberties, non-coercive institutions, consensual relationships, shared power, and inclusiveness. Human beings have a religious obligation to create institutions and social structures that reflect these values and enable all persons to live with dignity and respect. And now, with love and gratitude, we choose to give back to our local and broader community by sharing one half of our cash plate offering with a group that provides needed services for our community. Our shared plate recipient for the month of March is Family Promise. Their mission is to help homeless and low-income families achieve sustainable independence. Their affiliates are non-sectarian, and both clients and volunteers, such as us, come from diverse backgrounds and represent many faiths. We look forward to working with the recently created local chapter, Family Promise of Lower Bucks. Please give generously to this important work.
I wanted to say a little about this song that I'm going to sing. It was written by a man named Nimrod Workman. He was born in Kentucky, and at the age of 12, he went into the work in the coal mines in West Virginia. He was involved with Mother Jones and struggles against, and with John L. Lewis to bring unions. He was at the Battle of Blair Mountain, where they aerial bombed the strikers. And he worked in the mines for 42 years, and then he was writing songs, and now he's written this song, and I'm going to sing it. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones may form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you today. I'm a Unitarian Universalist who's been active in UU congregations and particularly social justice activities for many years. My home congregation is Germantown, not too far. And by profession, I've been an educator, a sociologist, an educator, a social worker, and a community organizer. And I've recently become the director of our statewide advocacy network. I learned about Unitarian Universalist traditions and commitment to social justice through marriage. My wife Linda happens to be here today, and through her family, her father was Reverend Ed Cahill, who some of you may know because he was in Pittsburgh at the end of his Pennsylvania career, and he introduced me to the humanist Unitarian tradition of explicit commitment to social justice as a core value. On my father's side, as I mentioned in my story, people came from northern Italy, but my grandfather, at a young age, actually was influenced by Italian Protestants, the Valdesi, the Waldensians, and he became a Protestant minister in the Lower East Side of New York. And the kind of applied Christianity of those days was called the social gospel. And so that was part of our family story too. So through these many influences, I basically came to believe and try to practice social justice as a core part of what it means to be religious and what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. Sometimes UUs discuss whether we have the basis, the same solid basis for social justice work as some of the more traditional religious traditions, where beliefs are more specific and more common, more everyone believes the same doctrine. Well, I do believe that our actual practice as a denomination speaks volumes, and it is a practice of significant engagement in the movements for social change. We particularly go back to abolitionism, think of the women's rights movement, think of the labor movement, the environmental movement, the movement for equality for gay and lesbian people. These are not minor themes in our denomination's history, our Universalist and Unitarian traditions. So I think we can take strength from the actual lived history of our denomination. And it's not just history. Those of us who are paying attention to what our denomination is doing know that all across the country, UUs are active on important social justice issues. You may not know that the idea of organizing ourselves as a cohesive group on the state level is relatively new, but also growing rapidly. There are 15 states where Unitarian Universalists feel it's so important to have a voice about policies at the state level that we, in fact, have organizations. And our organization in Pennsylvania is about 7 years old now. On the global level, we often are aware that our Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, the UUA itself, the UU office in the United Nations, are all, again, expressions of a denomination that doesn't see much light between our spirituality and our commitment to justice. As a matter of fact, it sees it as a unified whole. One of the areas I draw strength from when I meet resistance and social justice work is exemplary figures throughout our history. They're not all UUs, and one that I think of often, partly because I did a lot of research and got to know him through that, was a man named A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph was one of the premier African-American labor and civil rights leaders in the entire past century. Almost everybody may know that he was associated as a mentor of Martin Luther King, and he was up there on the platform in the Great March on Washington of 1963. But many might not know that there's an evolution, and that for decades before that, as a young man in the 1920s, he was an outspoken advocate for equal rights for African-American workers in the labor movement, and every year, he was a very dignified speaker. Every year he would go and make very impassioned but well-documented speeches before the national meeting of the trade unions, the American Federation of Labor. And he would document case after case of absolutely gross exclusion and discrimination. And every year, his comments would be registered in the minutes. That's how I know they're in the minutes, and then they would be ignored. And he did this for several decades. But later, later the Depression came. But even before the Depression, while he spoke truth to power in these halls of the trade unions, he went back home and he created, bit by bit, throughout the 1920s and 30s, what you may have heard of. It was basically the organization of black workers on the railroads, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And so from a railroad center to railroad center, including in the South, but you had in California right through to Missouri, to St. Louis, to Chicago, to Philadelphia, to New York, to Boston, you had this nucleus of people getting together and saying, this is not right, the way we're treated. And they formed this, by definition, independent union because they were excluded from the regular labor movement. And they did not win specific major improvements, but they were building the base for that. Then the 30s come along, the Depression, the opening for a more egalitarian labor movement happened. The mention in the song, the intro of the song of John L. Lewis, the industrial unions. The philosophy of these unions was you had to bring everybody in. That's the only way you could deal with the power of the corporations. And so, yes, there was prejudice. Yes, there were many examples of discrimination. But the dominant philosophy of that movement, which became crystallized in the Congress of Industrial Organization, the CIO, the predominant philosophy was everybody's welcome. And in that context, A. Philip Randolph got more and more heard. He was an ally of that movement, a mentor in that movement. And as you get to the emergence of the Second World War, a major issue confronting the African American community and all those who cared about justice was discrimination keeping African American workers out of the defense plants that were springing up all over the country. So millions of people, and because of the millions of women workers were going into the plants, black workers generally were excluded or put into the most traditional janitorial and service jobs. They weren't allowed into the main area where the better wages and conditions were. So this was an issue throughout the country in the African American community. Randolph used that network that he had created, this relatively small African American union, the Sleeping Car Porters. He used that as the nucleus, and that became what was known of, in talking 1941, 42, it became the March on Washington movement, MOWM. And in cities across the country, including Philadelphia, including St. Louis, including Chicago, and so forth, there were mass marches outside these factories where they're building airplanes and tanks. And generally they were all black marches. That was part of the power, that the people were speaking up who had not been speaking up. And with that kind of power, organization across the country, Randolph kept speaking truth to power. He and people with him went to Washington, and there were some positive forces within the administration, including Eleanor Roosevelt, got hearings with the president, and using the threat in the middle of the Second World War, where we're fighting Nazism, we're fighting racism, using the threat of an all-black march on Washington for basic jobs and dignity, Roosevelt said, okay. And he issued an order. It was called the Fair Employment Practices Committee, and this committee came out and held hearings in communities like Philadelphia and St. Louis and said, okay, what's the facts? What's going on here? And when there was gross discrimination, there were orders to cease and desist if they wanted to keep those federal contracts. So it happens, that's a story that I know, and it often comes to mind. It comes to mind because of the lessons. And I think the lessons that we who see within Unitarian Universalism, we who see justice as core, as central, can learn a couple of things from Randolph's experience and from that movement. One is focus. His example teaches us the importance and the effectiveness of keeping a focus, a perseverance, often over decades. Our denomination, for example, has built a credibility and power by staying with our work for full human rights for all people, regardless of sexual orientation. This is something that we didn't visit and we stayed with. And that perseverance, that focus, has given us more influence than we would ever otherwise have. We have seen this emerging in our denomination's consistent focus on immigration justice. Were there folks here at the GA, the General Assembly, this past summer? Okay. Oh, okay. Not present here. Well, you do know that was, we chose to go to Arizona in order to protest. And when I go to meetings where I meet people of other faiths, when I meet immigrant rights groups, as soon as I say where I'm from, they say, they know we're an ally. This is not, we're not visiting. We're into this. So focus is one lesson that I think of when I think of A. Philip Randolph speaking truth to power when he had no organization and speaking truth to power when he had developed a base and he was dealing with people in the Roosevelt administration. A second is the lesson is you do have to build power. You do have to go beyond having the good arguments. They can be our good moral arguments. They can be our religious arguments. They can be our factual arguments. They can be our economic arguments. But we also have to say, how are we going to bring those with decision-making power around? And that brings us the need to develop some power and the willingness to use that for significant changes. One of the reflections on this core lesson you may have heard. It's by Frederick Douglass. Way back in 1857, within the abolitionist movement, he wrote the following: "The whole history of progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to her august claims have been born of earnest struggle. If there's no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters." This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical. But it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. So a third lesson from the movement that I told you about, the March on Washington movement, is that to get that power, you have to step by step build up an organization. You yourself have to be organized. In this case, in the historical case, it was the black workers themselves. They were organized. And then they had to work in coalition with many, many others and keep unity in order to get something done. Randolph really played a very important role educating the next generation. People like Martin Luther King were very much influenced, in addition to philosophical influences about nonviolence from many sources. He was influenced by the real in-depth experience of people of Randolph's generation with building power and using it responsibly. So how could we, in 2013, as UUs living in Pennsylvania apply some of these lessons or think about the meaning of them. For one, I think we could renew and celebrate our understanding that acting for social justice is central, not an optional element in our practice of faith together. Here's another statement by Reverend Paul Razor. Our covenant, when we as UU congregations, our covenant when we join a UU congregation includes a fundamental commitment to social justice, as is clear in both the language of our principles and purposes and the actual historical practices of our tradition. Our approach is prophetic. Our approach to prophetic practice might look different if we truly understood it as a covenant obligation, as one of the clauses in our sacred contract with each other, rather than simply as volunteer work that we might or might not decide to take on. So imagine he's saying to us, if engaging in social justice work was really something we all did, not just in this congregation, but in all our 40 congregations, imagine what we could be doing. Imagine it and compare it to many situations where the social justice people are kind of a small, hardy crew and other people are in the background. Second, I think we could face up, a second lesson more specifically, we could face up to the need to think about practically how do we create power. And in very brief outline, what I hope our UU Pennsylvania Legislative Advocacy Network offers is an example of creating power first by getting organized ourselves, developing our ability to act collectively, and then working with partners and allies. A third specific way is we need to reflect on our abilities to work together to get focus, because it's hard, right? How do we choose which issue to work on? But also our skills at working collaboratively with others, other faith traditions, other constituents. We need to keep working on those skills because we can't have it just the way we want it. We would learn to distinguish from being the lonely few who feel right and righteous regarding our views on social justice versus becoming effective by sometimes coming to a compromise but working together in more powerful ways with others. In closing, I understand that you've had some discussions here about your core values and that social justice has been really identified as one of your core values as a congregation. And I'm very, very happy to know that about you. It makes our connection very important to me. As you further develop this core commitment, I invite you to reflect on the types and levels of social justice work you're already doing and envision and think about where you'd like to go in the future. As you do this evaluating what we're now doing, what we'd like to do, please look upon our UUPLAN and your sister congregations as a resource. We can work together. We can make this work. We can be more effective. UUs throughout the country, and you may have read in the UU World and other ways, the UUs in California, by organizing, played a major, major part in winning as a governmental principle the right to adequate and drinkable water, which is a very big issue in California. And of course, as you think about the fracking issue, it's a big issue in Pennsylvania. In Maryland, UUs played a major role in the movement which achieved legal recognition of the right to marriage. In New Jersey, there have been similar victories. In some states, it's been, like Pennsylvania, it's been more defensive. We've pushed back against some pretty bad proposals. Either way, through working together, we have tremendous potential power. And I'd like you to keep that in mind as you think about the gap between social justice as we now practice it and social justice as we could practice it. I thank you for your time. Look forward to talking with you after the service.
I invite you to rise, embody your spirit, and join in our closing hymn, number 131 in the gray hymnal, which is Love Will Guide Us. Pennsylvania's social history is full of heroic movements of and by the working poor and many others for justice. A song emerged from the struggles of mine workers in the past century to organize and to fight for basic improvements in wages, hours, conditions, and treatment as full human beings. It speaks to us of the power of uniting together. Let's say the words together as we end this service. Please repeat each line after me. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won.
Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won.
Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none.
Many stones can form an arch,
singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill. Drops of water turn a mill. Singly none, singly none.
Singly none, singly none.
May we remember the power we have when we come together for change. May we remember the power
we have when we come together for change.
Now we will do the closing words, and I can tell from the musicians we're going to have some more music going out, so that's awesome. May we go in peace. Our service is concluded. Let us continue in fellowship.
children. Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Dig it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. Sing along. Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me. Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me. Drink the water, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. Breathe the air now, children. Breathe it now with me. Breathe the air now, children. Breathe it now with me. Breathe the air now, children. Treat it lovingly.